Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're at. This is Dr. Diane Sanchez, and we are going to discuss recruiting and labor markets. All right, our learning objectives is list different ways that the labor markets can be identified and approached, discuss the strategic decisions covering recruiting image, outsourcing, and other related areas. Explain why internet recruiting has grown and how it affects recruiting efforts done by employers. Highlight 5 external recruiting sources. Identify 3 internal sources for recruiting and issues associated with their use. Describe 3 factors to consider when doing recruiting measurement and metrics. So let's jump into recruiting. What is recruiting? It is a process of generating a pool of qualified applicants for organizational jobs. And some of the considerations you have to have when you begin recruiting is, of course, the cost of that recruiting. Will it give you quality of recruited candidates? Hopefully it will. It'll generate quality of recruited candidates. And then, of course, the cost of the job going unfilled. So that is really what we look at. Now, here are the internal components of effective recruiting. And so you really need to know the industry and where to successfully recruit qualified employees. So you also need to identify keys to success in the labor market, including competitors' recruiting efforts. You need to cultivate relationships with sources of prospective employees. You need to promote the company brand so that the employer is known as a good place to work, and use recruiting metrics to measure the effectiveness of your recruiting efforts. So all of those kinds of things is what's integral components of effective recruiting. Now, recruiting requirements expected of employers. Well, we've talked about this. Know the industry and where to successfully recruit, identify keys to the success labor market, all of the things I just said. Cultivate, promote the brand. Training of recruiters and managers, a very big part of what we as human resources practitioners must do is we've got to train our recruiting, our managers in how to recruit and how to do related activities to recruiting. And it's important that our managers know what kinds of things they shouldn't ask, their communication skills, sensitivity to diversity and other issues, ethical recruiting behaviors. Again, very important for your recruiting managers to understand, and then follow-up activities with the potential candidates. All those are critical. Now, what's the labor market? What are the components of a labor market? It's the external supply pool which employers attract employees. Components of the labor market is the labor force population, all individuals who are available for the selection if all possible recruitment strategies are used. Applicant population, subset of the labor force population that is available for selection using a particular recruiting approach. Applicant pool then is all the persons who are actually evaluated from the selection, and the applicant tracking system makes the recruiting process more effective because it gives you the ability to see your applicants and be able to screen them down in your applicant pool. Individuals selected for the job, when the candidates reject the offer, the HR staff members must move back to the funnel to the applicant pool for other candidates, and the HR staff in extreme cases may need to reopen the recruiting process. One of the things that you need to understand is you can find your labor force population from the BLS, that's the Bureau of Labor Statistics.gov, and that can give you state, city, county, by job category. So it's a great way to find out what your labor market is in your surrounding area, as well as your state and or nationwide if necessary. Unemployment rates and labor markets. Unemployment rates vary with business cycles, obviously. Strict hiring adopted by companies was due to the recessionary conditions. Obviously, after 2008, the financial crash really burdened and sometimes laid off several individuals. Decreased customer spending may be another reason for potential issues in the labor market. Increased business competition, especially with our global markets. And decreased need for new employees due to the developments in technology. And so really, a lot of positions, especially blue-collar positions, have been replaced by technology. Amazon even has come out with almost a human robot in their facilities, hopefully to eliminate their blue-collar workforce in their warehouses. Here's some of the considerations for determining applicant populations: the number and type of recruits needed to fill a job, the timing of the recruiting to ensure effective placement, external and internal messages on the details of the jobs to be filled, qualifications of applicants to be considered by recruiters, sources for obtaining qualified applicants for job to be filled, outside and inside recruiting means to be used by recruiters, administrative recruiting and application review activities, and consideration of organization's strategy to determine recruiting goals. Recruiting is really a lot of fun, but there is a science to it, and there's metrics. So here's a great chart that gives you the labor markets. Industrial and occupational labor markets. These jobs represent the healthcare, retail, and education industries. You've got education and technical labor markets considered in the education and technical qualifications. That's a typo on the top one. It shouldn't have education industries under industry and occupational labor. Geographic labor markets. Markets can be local, area, regional, and national, and international and global labor markets. Firms expand by exporting work to overseas labor markets. Like I said, many of this you can get from the Bureau of Labor Statistics and various other places. The global labor markets are a little bit more difficult to find, but it can be found. Now, recruiting presence and image. This is important when you're thinking about strategic recruiting decisions, because now it is really important to get those qualified candidates, and you've got to be strategic about it. And one of the ways you can be strategic is your image. You've got to continuously be out there, either on the campuses of college or just advertising in magazines. It offers the advantage of keeping the employer in the recruiting market. So if you pick up magazines, you can see some individuals who are constantly having their recruiting out there, their ads. And you can also do intensive. That's vigorous recruiting campaigns aimed at hiring a given number of employees in a short period of time. That's usually done when you're building a facility and you've got or a new store space or something like that, where you've got to have it manned and get employees to man it. So Most of the larger companies continue to do the continuous and more of the what I'd call geographic areas. You know, when a Walmart opens, it's intensive, or a Whole Foods. Those kinds of things are intensive recruiting. But you can do both. Now, your brand, that is become very popular in the 21st century. It's basically the image of the organization that is held both by the employees and outsiders. It's basically your reputation. And it's important that you have a good reputation, and that's why companies really invest in social responsibility or volunteer days or various other charity events. They want to build their brand as well, so that they look like, or they project that they're a good employer, which most of them are. So it's important to have that in the brand. Company brand can help generate more recruits, which is really important for you. Okay, so these are the strategic recruiting decisions you have to make. First of all, organization-based versus outsourced recruiting, recruiting presence and image, regular versus staffing, realistic job reviews, recruiting and EEO diversity considerations, and recruiting sources choice, internal versus external. So let's take each one of these. First, we're going to go over organization-based versus outsourced. So you can have an organization that's an RPO, recruitment process outsourcing. And these kinds of organizations you know, try to improve the number of qualified candidates. It's estimated that this will grow significantly in the future as HR departments begin to really skinny down. It's really going to be what I think, especially with technology, the new way to recruit. It reduces recruiting costs. Now, there's professional employer organizations, which is PEOs, and employee leasing. This is where the employer signs an agreement with the PEO. You basically, when you're having a PEO, the employees belong to the PEO. The employees get their paychecks from the PEO. The PEO services the company, but they're not their employees, although there can be some co-employment issues between the PEO and the company. Staff is hired by a leasing firm too and leased back to the company, as I talked about. Leasing firm writes the paychecks, pays the taxes, prepares and implements the HR policies, keeps all the required records for the employer. Now, the downside to this, though, is I talked about co-employment. When an employee sues, really the company is still liable, depending on what it's for. So you've got to be careful when you sign with the PEO that you're really reading the fine print about who's ultimately financially responsible. All right, regular versus flexible staffing. Employers are hesitant to hire full-time employees due to increased costs, economic conditions, excessive competition, government considerations. So many individuals or companies really hire temp workers, that the employers can hire their own staff members or make use of agencies on a rate per day, week basis. Now, this can be a little dangerous if, you know, those temp workers are there for a long period of time. But the purpose of hiring temps is to match the firm's need with the right workers, avoid costs associated with benefits, especially with the new ACA, what people call Obamacare. Enhance staffing flexibility. You can let them go, can hire them quickly, but there has been challenges of late where temp workers have been in organizations for 6 months to a year, and the IRS, as well as the Department of Labor, has said that they are in fact employees. Independent contractors, these are your 1099s, workers who perform specific services on a contract basis. There's an advantage to the employer as they do not have to pay benefits also. It's done by individuals who are highly skilled, highly experienced, not affected by the familiar responsibilities. Again, another dangerous area for companies, especially if they have 1099 employees that are core to their business and they've kept them a while. Pros and cons of utilizing flexible staffing: it really does enable organizations to hire workers without incurring high costs, reduces time spent on recruiting efforts, and including efforts spent on screening and initial training of the workers, because your temp agency usually does that. Facilitates a flexible workplace model in some organizations. Companies can avoid litigation associated with termination of permanent workers, again with a caution. Severance benefits not usually provided to individuals when work ends. Cons: flexible workers can sometimes exhibit poor job performance in the workplace. Low motivation might occur because of a lack of opportunity for long-term employment and job advancement, and I see that a lot with temp workers. They just know they're not going to get hired, so they want to move on someplace else because they're really looking for a permanent kind of place. Time limits on temporary worker contracts prevent significant enhancements in individual skills and knowledge. And those time limits are pretty strict, usually 90 days. It starts getting a little sketchy when you're in the 6-month area, especially temps that have been there 6 months to a year. Companies might have to offer premium wages to attract individuals working in the more advanced fields. So recruiting and diversity considerations. Well, diversity is really around us now in the 21st century, but it's no longer just a black, white, Hispanic, male, female kind of word. Diversity now incorporates people of different races, ethnic backgrounds, people over 40, retirees, single parents, workers with disability, welfare to work, homeless, substance abuse workers. I mean, you've got a multitude of individuals that can absolutely meet diversity qualifications. So you've got to outreach, train your recruiters in EEO on EEO and diversity issues, and then make sure that they really understand how to target and recruit diverse applicants with varying characteristics, reaching out into the disability community, which Walmart does a very good job on. Their greeters, they really reach out to the disabled, to veterans. I mean, all of those individuals are great diversity considerations. And then, of course, making sure that your efforts are in your brochures and your website. So, organizations must work to reduce external disparate impact. Now, what's disparate impact? That means that you have policies, procedures that may have a negative reflection on a protected class. And so you're trying to make sure that your recruiting processes work to reduce that impact or unrepresentation of a protected class member. So it's important, and your recruiters need to know that that's pretty much something you've got to keep in compliance with, especially if you have affirmative action plans. And then special ways to reduce disparate impact can be identified as goals listed in the affirmative action plans. It can also just be outreach. Now, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, which really watches for diversity concerns, the guidelines state that no direct or indirect references implying gender or age are permitted. So we used to have applications that had dates of birth dates and dates of graduation. Now those have been eliminated from the application. Advertisements should contain wording about being an equal employment opportunity employer. Many ads have that. It's important that they all have it because, again, that is guidance from the EEOC. And then specific designations such as EEO, M/F, that's minorities, females. You know, it can be Americans with disability. So it can be given in those advertisements. It's really something that all recruiters should make sure that they do. Very much important, as well as I also put them in my internal ads. Recruiting diversity, non-traditional diverse recruitees, persons with different racial, ethnic backgrounds, older workers, as I've told you, single parents, workers with disabilities, welfare to work, and then homeless, substance abuse workers. Now, what's a realistic job preview? This is really terrific, and you can do a lot of this online, but it basically gives the applicant the advantages, the demands, the expectations, and challenges in an organization or a particular job. And it's really kind of neat to do because they need to know, applicants need to know what it's going to be like when they're hired for that specific position. Helps attract employees with more realistic expectations. And I've been seeing a lot of cool realistic job views around that are really attracting millennials particularly. Reduce the number of employees who quit a few months after being hired. That is, if they know what the job really entails. And you kind of do a day in the life of you know, a crewman or somebody who, a flight attendant or an engineer, any of those. You give them a good purview of where they're working, what they'll be expected to do, so on and so forth. All right, internal recruiting. This is the other thing, choices you need to make. Are you going to internal versus external? And we talked about that in previous chapters. Promoting from within, or are you going to go outside the organization? Possible strategy for organizations that face rapidly changing competitive environments and conditions might be to promote from within if a qualified applicant exists, or go to external sources if not. Now, internal recruiting, again, is a choice you need to make, adjusting to new recruiting approaches, identifying new types of recruiting. I'm sorry, this is internet recruiting. Adjusting to new recruiting approaches, identifying new types of recruiting for specific jobs, training for managers and the HR recruiters. Many individuals, particularly applicants, do not like internet recruiting, and it's because they feel like they don't get that face-to-face kind of time with potential recruiters. So it's really hard, but it does help the recruiters to to really narrow down the applicant pool. There's e-recruiting places, internet job boards, professional career websites, and your employer websites. A lot of individuals do LinkedIn. Those are the job boards, or Monster, or Yahoo, Hot Jobs. Then you've got professional and career websites, things like engineers, Hispanic engineers, African American engineers, very much, or IT people, IT websites, and then your own website. Internet recruiting, social networking recruiting advantages. It allows job seekers to connect with employees of potential employers. It allows employers to engage in social collaboration by joining and assessing social technology networks to help applicants post resumes and complete applications online. And companies more and more are using these kinds of social networking to enhance the recruitment of employees. UPS does use them, AT&T. They've developed, mobile recruiting strategies whereby cell phones are used to better communicate with job candidates. Some new technology is texting. It's going to be amazing with all the technology how we'll be able to interact through these networks. Internet recruiting tools, obviously blogs, e-videos, Twitter, so forth and so on. I mean, it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing to me from when I was in HR to now. But firms like Best Buy, Microsoft, Honeywell, they've used blogs on which individuals could read and provide content, and they describe job openings, e-videos and recruiting. That there are some really neat videos out there. UPS uses video messaging about how the company attracts new employees, and it really is terrific. And then recruiting through Twitter has been very popular because there's about 7 million people who've joined Twitter, and obviously tweeting is a rapid way of becoming a social network recruiting method. Now, legal issues in internet recruiting. This is really important for us to understand, is the use or misuse of screening software. You've got to avoid, not looking at all the thousands of resumes. I mean, when companies use screening software to avoid looking at thousands of resumes, they receive are rejections really based on the qualifications needed for the job. So you've got to make sure you're using your screening software appropriately. Collection of required applicant information. How can data about an individual's protected characteristics be collected and analyzed for reports? Exclusion of protected classes from the process. Are too many individuals being excluded from the later phases of the internet recruiting process based on unlawful information? And then proper identification of real applicants, which applicants really want jobs. If someone has accessed a job board and sent an email asking an employer about a job opening, does the person actually want to be an applicant? And then maintaining confidentiality and privacy. What are the implications of internet recruiting in terms of confidentiality and privacy? And the U.S. Federal Trade Commission really does kind of watch some of these issues. We've really got to be cautious as it relates to internet recruiting, because you've got to define what an applicant is and what a credible job is. And if you are just taking resumes to take resumes, those all become applicants, and you have a responsibility to absolutely screen them in the appropriate way. Okay, internet recruiting advantages obviously is the costs. Recruiting takes less time consuming, broader exposure to a diverse pool of applicants, better targeting of specific audiences. Recruiters can reach passive job seekers. Those are people who are employed and maybe not be looking right now. Disadvantages, you probably get more unqualified applicants, additional work for the HR staff. Many applicants are not really seriously seeking employment. Access is limited or unavailable to some applicants, and that's true of some minority groups. And then privacy of information and discrimination issues. All right, so let's talk about external recruiting sources that we can use. Media, employment agencies, job fairs, educational institutions, labor unions, and competitive recruiting sources. So advantages and disadvantages of external recruiting. Advantages is new employees bring new perspectives that can be applied to the business, and opportunities and challenges. Training new hires may be cheaper and faster because of prior external experience. New hires are likely to have fewer internal political issues and challenges in the firm. New hires may bring new industry insights and expertise, and potentially larger applicant pool generated by search efforts can really help find some very interesting applicants. The disadvantages is the firm may not select someone who will fit well with the job in the organization, and that's really, studies have shown, really employees who don't fit the culture don't seem to make it. They may have the skills and knowledge and aptitude to do the job, but it could be the culture or the organization. The process may cause morale problems for internal candidates not selected, and new employees may require longer adjustment periods and orientation efforts. Your onboarding efforts may take more time. The recruiting process also takes time, and recruiters often must evaluate more applications than most. So here's the media sources. That's newspapers, magazines, television, radio, billboards, internet media such as postings, ads, videos, webinars are also used. Effectiveness of evaluating media ads is easy ways to track responses to the ads. Different contact names, email addresses, phone number codes in each. I mean, you can get a lot of data if you do this. So after hiring, you can follow up. Follow-up should really be done on these, evaluating the media ads. Shows which sources produce the employees who stay longer and better performance. So, I mean, once you hire somebody from a particular ad, you may go back and find out where that qualified applicant came from and really spend your money there. So what to include in an effective recruiting ad? Well, you've got all the job and application process information, the title, the responsibilities, the location, the starting salary or pay range, how to submit an application or resume, and the closing date of the application. Then the desired candidate qualifications. How many years of experience do you want them to have? What's the appropriate background and previous job assignments? What's the knowledge, skills, and abilities that you're requiring? What's the work capabilities and competencies necessary to do the job? And then organization information, company values and culture, and EEO philosophy and statement. This is really kind of your brand, your business capabilities, orientation and strategies, and unique characteristics and recognition of your company. And then those are everything that you need to detail in ads, and it should be pretty inclusive. Competitive recruiting sources includes professional societies and trade organizations. They publish newsletters and magazines. They may have job sites you can post on. Employment agencies are public and private. Those can be anything from the unemployment agencies to city agencies, private employment agencies in most cities, but there's usually a fee collected with that, either from the employee or from the employer. Public employment agencies operate branch offices in cities throughout the United States. That's a very good place to post your job. They don't charge fees to applicants or employees, but private employment agencies normally do. Headhunters focus their efforts on executive, managerial, and professional positions. Executive search firms split into two. Contingency firms, that's where they charge a fee after the candidate is hired, usually 20-25% of the salary. Or you've got a retainer fee. They charge a fee whether or not the candidate is successfully hired. That's usually at the executive level. And again, those can be pretty pricey, usually around 33 to 40% of a person's salary. Labor unions, labor pools are available through a union. Workers can be dispatched from hiring halls to particular jobs to meet the needs of employers. That's usually in mechanics, truck drivers, those kinds of things. You can have job fairs, which are really terrific. Can be overwhelming when you're at a job fair, especially if you've got a lot of applicants at the fair. And that's really, a lot of them go there because that's the only time they can really meet any of the recruiters. So, and then creative recruiting can be used to generate a pool of qualified applicants quickly. So you can do virtual job fairs, and job fairs at shopping malls have been used. You could just do a myriad of creative recruiting methods to get people to come and visit your location, especially if you've got to film quickly. College recruits are always a good place to recruit, either from elite universities. You can ask for their GPA, and then many of them have done great internships. College recruiting is a wonderful source, but it can be expensive, and these are the considerations for employers. Really, the budget and the college graduate pay levels, what's the anticipated job openings, experiences with prior college graduates and interns, what is the reputation of the firm at the college and with the previous graduates, and then college graduate programs and faculty links are always good. College placement office reputation and assistance programs. On the left is the employer considerations. As well on the right too, it is really important that you've got a good reputation on that college campus and that you've hired people, not just to show up to, you know, build your brand, but to really hire at the schools. School recruiting, there's cooperative programs, students who work part-time while attending school. Career encouragement. I mentor a lot of my students, and when I am at UTA, I serve them to do career counseling. I show them where they can go get internships. I do mentor programs. Some of them will shadow me if they're interested in getting into human resources, and so I will take them out to a client, and you know, it's just a good way for university kids to understand what the job really entails. Internal recruiting sources, that's your database. You've got job postings, and then you've got employee referral programs. Those are terrific as well. So you've got a myriad of ways to recruit internally. Advantages and disadvantages of internal recruiting. The morale of a promotee is usually high. The firm can better assess a candidate's abilities on the basis of prior work performance. Recruiting costs are lower for the same job. The process is a motivator for good performance by employees, and the process can aid in succession planning, future promotions, and career development. The disadvantages is there's inbreeding. May result in less diverse workforce as well as a lack of new ideas. Individuals not promoted may experience poor morale. And then a development program often is needed to transfer employees into supervisor or management jobs. And some managers may resist having employees promoted into their departments. I'm going to go back to this slide because I really want you to read the details in your book about these various different ways to recruit. And then metrics. These are probably the hardest thing to do in the recruiting area, evaluating recruiting quality and quantity, evaluating recruiting satisfaction, evaluating the time required to fill openings, and evaluating the cost of recruiting. Now, your CFO will be asking you all these statistics because he's going to see the number that you're spending on recruiting, and he's going to want to understand, is he getting a yield from that? And so it's important you understand the metrics. Recruiting measurement areas is quality, quantity, recruitment satisfaction. We've talked about time to fill, cost per recruiting method, process metrics, yield ratios, selection rates, acceptance rates, success-based rates. Those are terrific. And your book gives you very much detail about it. But here's some of the definitions of the metrics. The yield ratio is the comparison of the number of applicants at one stage of the recruiting process with the number at the next stage. And your book has a great pyramid of that. Selection rate is the percentage hired from a given group of candidates. And then the acceptance rate, obviously, the percent of applicants hired divided by the total number of applicants offered the job. And then the success-based rate, longer-term measure for recruiting effectiveness, is the success rate of applicants. And that can be seen by really their performance and other things, how well they've done through the organization. This is the chart I was talking about, and this gives you a great example of the different metrics. Obviously, the yield ratios in each category. It is really a terrific slide. Now, how do we increase recruiting effectiveness? We can do resume mining. That is a software approach to getting the best resumes for a fit from a bigger database. Applicant tracking, an approach that takes an applicant all the way from a job listing to performance appraisal results. Employer career websites, convenient recruiting place on an employer's website where applicants can see what jobs are available. Internal mobility, a system that tracks prospects in the company and matches them with jobs that may come open. That's really your talent management software program. And realistic job previews, a process that the individuals can use to get details on the employer and the job that they're potentially going to get. And then responsive recruitment. Applicants need to receive timely responses, and if their resume is just out there in la la land, it can be frustrating. Fair and professional treatment by the recruiters, emphasis on positive aspects about the job and the employer by recruiters, All of these are very important to recruiting effectiveness. Recruiting effectiveness can be increased by using evaluation data to target different applicant pools, tap broader labor markets, and then change recruiting methods. Asking applicants to take a survey is really important. How did they find the job? What did they think of your process? All of those kinds of things can help. And that can help you change up your recruiting methods. And then improve internal handling and interviewing of applicants. I always ask the applicant how was their process, rate the recruiters, rate the job fair if they went to a job fair. It's important because we've got to treat applicants as if they were customers, and they probably are customers of our company. So it's important that we train recruiters and managers in all these various ways. So I hope you have enjoyed this webcast. I appreciate you attending. As always, if you have any questions, please email me. Thank you.